Well, hello everyone, my name is Rick Costello, and welcome to the universe we live in, which is just a great, fantastic place. There's many things we're understanding about our universe now, even though there's a lot we don't understand, but we are understanding a lot of it. It's just a fantastic place. We'll start out with this picture here. It's basically a giant star field along the band of our Milky Way, and it's over here we have, on this side, we have the coal stack. We'll show you pictures of that later, but just a lot of stars in our galaxies. Now, when you look at these photographs of the galaxies, you got to think of them in like 3D, you know, because some of the stars are closer, some of them are far away, and the distances vary. And just because a star is brighter does not necessarily mean it's closer to us. Some of the bright stars are actually further away than the dimmer stars, but they're just massive stars with high luminosity, very bright. And you have to kind of look at these photographs as almost like a 3D image, where you're looking into the far distance. And sometimes many of the dimmer ones are actually closer to us. Now, another thing you'll notice about the stars are some of the colors. In this scene, you'll see some blue whites, you'll see some yellow, some white stars, and some blue stars. And that all goes by the determination of the temperature of the star. The red stars are the cooler stars, and the bluish white are the more massive, hotter stars. And the hottest stars live their lives the shortest. The reddest ones usually live their lives longer than the bluish hot stars. And on this slide here, this is a star field. This is actually a star cluster. Now, most stars are born in groups. You'll have a cloud, a nebula, where a star-forming cloud, and hundreds or thousands of stars will be formed in these clouds. And these stars are all gravitationally bound, but over time they'll spread out among the galaxy, and they'll spread out. And this cluster here is a very young cluster, and over time they'll spread out away from each other. And they're all kind of gravitationally bound. Some stars will stay gravitationally bound in pairs, but some of the stars will go off by themselves, like our star did. Now, this is a globular cluster seen through a bunch of stars. And the globular clusters are very cool. They're very old stars in the realm of about 12 billion years old. And this is a globular cluster looking through like I said, looking through a star field, a lot of stars in front of it. But if we go to this next slide, it shows you one of my favorite globular clusters, the Hercule globular cluster. Now, the Hercules is about 25,100 light years away from us. It's about 145 light years in diameter. And again, these are very old stars, about 10 billion years old. There's no gases and dust to form new stars, and there hasn't been for billions of years. And we think these globular clusters might probably from other galaxies that joined our galaxy, and these are left over, never joined our galaxy. And like I said, a lot of these stars are in the range of 12 billion years old, very old stars. And on this next slide, here we go with our Milky Way galaxy, the galaxy we live in. Now, the way this picture is, it's kind of flattened, but this actually would go around the Earth. This side over here would actually connect with this side, and the top would connect with the bottom. This kind of goes around the Earth, but like a globe, we flatten it out on a piece of paper to see the Earth and the continents. Same thing with this photograph here. Now, a couple things to see in this photograph. Down here, right about here, we have the center of the galaxy, and up here we have Scorpio, which is up in the summer, and down here we have the Sagittarius, the constellation, which you can see in the summertime, and pretty much from maybe about from here all the way up here. This is our summer sky. This will be up. This Milky Way band will be up like in August and September. It'll be traveling from the south to the north. The center of the galaxy will be just over the southern horizon for us. And now the closest star to us, if we move, we go to this slide here. This is a closer version of the center of the galaxy. And just a lot of great things. Again, if I move over here, the center of the galaxy is right about here. And so you see Sagittarius down here, the stars. And then you have, if I move here, Up here we have Sagittarius and the star Antares right here. Antares is a giant star in the realm of about 800 million miles in diameter, which is huge. Consider our sun's about 850,000 miles in diameter. And it's a red giant. Eventually it's going to go supernova, blow itself up, and forming all these elements that make planets and you and I. And then over here on this other side, this star right here is the closest star to us, Alpha Centauri, this bright one here. And it's actually, it looks like one star, but it's actually two stars combined, two sun-like stars. And the closest star to us, Proxima Centauri, which can't be seen, it's too small. It's actually a red dwarf. But this is where the closest star to us is, right here, this star here. As we look out in the universe, I mean, there's stars everywhere. And thank goodness for stars, because if stars didn't light up these galaxies, we would have no idea about the rest of the universe. Everything would be dark. And if there were no stars, we would not be here either without our sun. So luckily we have the sun here for us. And so there's a lot of stars in the Milky Way galaxy, in all these other galaxies. There's approximately 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe. This is where stars are made. You see a spiral galaxy here, and you see all these clouds, these nebulas. There's a lot of star forming going on here. And then you go over here, like all these blue lights around here and up on top there and behind me. That's where stars are being formed along these spiral arms and these clouds here. And just a lot of star forming going on in this cloud, this galaxy here. And on this next slide is another spiral galaxy, and a lot of star forming going on in this cloud. And spirals have a lot of star production going on, and like our galaxy, and just a lot of stars being formed. And you see the nebulas again in the center of the galaxy, and just a beautiful galaxy, but a lot of star forming going on in this galaxy. Now, this is another type of galaxy, an elliptical galaxy. Now, these galaxies are usually, some of them are gigantic with trillions of stars, and they're formed by collisions by other galaxies joining them. Or we eventually think that when the Andromeda galaxy collides with our galaxy, it's going to make a mess of our galaxy. It's going to go back and forth with the gravity. We think eventually it'll probably make an elliptical galaxy. Now, in elliptical galaxies, they don't have much gases or dust. It seems like they've all been pushed out by the collisions. And so there's not a lot of star forming going on in the ellipticals, some not at all in some of these ellipticals. And this next slide is another elliptical galaxy. And they're basically featureless. You have a lot of stars in the center, as you see, which is very bright. But the rest of it, the halo, is basically just all stars. And it's, like I said, not a lot of gases in this to see. And ellipticals are pretty giant galaxies, like I said. Now here we go back to our galaxy, and you see all the stars and the nebulas and all that, and that's where stars are being formed in our galaxy. Now this is where the galaxies are formed. There's a nice cloud here, and a lot of star forming going on in these clouds, and a lot of new stars. These are all new stars, and below me, new stars. And from these clouds, like I said, hundreds to thousands of stars will be formed in these clouds. And this is part of the Eagle Nebula. They call this the Spire. And this thing here is about 9 light years long. And you think is gigantic when you consider the closest star to us is 4.2 light years away from us, Alpha Centauri, and the Proxima Centauri, the star. So this thing is just a gigantic cloud-forming star, and it's part of the Eagle Nebula. And there's another star-forming cloud, the Orion Nebula, which we'll show later. But you see a lot of these young stars and just being formed in these clouds. And they're starting the solar wind is actually starting to blow the clouds away from these new stars. And then on this next slide, we have the Lagoon Nebula, one of my favorites to look at through my telescope in the summertime. Very thick star-forming cloud. And it's really nice. This is another smaller cloud here. There's some young stars forming in here. But it's not a very heavy cloud here of nebula, but just basically a cloud there out there in our galaxy. And this is another nebula. Now this is using infrared light. And with infrared light, we can actually see right through the clouds, and we can see into the clouds and see the young stars being formed. And that's what we're seeing here, looking right through the clouds as as the starlight in infrared comes right through the clouds, like the clouds aren't even there in some instances, and we see right inside the clouds, and which is good. And then here we have, this is a famous one, the pillars. This is part of the Eagle Nebula. And over here we have the pillars of creation. And up on top here this is the Spire right here, again about 9 light years long. And down here, the pillars here, we'll go for a close-up here on the next slide. This is a close-up of the pillars. Now these things, this tall one here is about 5 to 6 light years long. It's incredibly long. And up on top here, there's some stars being formed. There's a very thick cloud. Now NASA recently released another photograph of this in infrared, so we can see inside it. And you notice there's not a lot of stars in this picture. But as we go to the next slide, and this one, using the infrared, we can see right in through these clouds. You see a lot more stars popping out here. And there's just hundreds of stars being formed in this cloud, and just a giant star factory. Now, in this next slide, we're going to go to the top of it. And this is the top of the tallest pillar on the left. And you see these little things here. These Pleiades, I guess you call it, or actually these are new star systems being formed. The Pleiades would be planets, but it could be solar systems being formed here. But these nodules are where the stars are being formed. There's some more up on top here. And within this whole thing is just a lot of stars being formed. And what's happening is here, gravity is collapsing this cloud. And it's starting to revolve, rotate around, and gravity's pulling in. The stars being formed in many of these polyps here, some more up here, and above me up here, and there's a lot in this cloud. And so that's where stars are being formed. Now another famous one, of course, is the Constellation Orion. And Orion's just a great constellation up in the winter sky. It's actually probably behind the sun right now. It's set with the sun a few weeks ago, but it's more a winter constellation. But of course, over here we have the 3 stars of Orion's belt that everyone is probably familiar with up in our sky. And we have up here we have the star Betelgeuse, and the giant star. It's got a diameter of about 600 million miles. And recently you might have heard that it's been fading, but the astronomers have realized that it wasn't actually fading. It was actually it released a lot of the surface of the sun was blown off the star, and that cloud was actually blocking our visual from the star, making it appear to dim, but it wasn't dimming. Now it's starting to bright up again. So by next winter it comes back. It should be back to where it was before, unless the cloud's still in the way. And above my shoulder here we have Bellatrix, and then down by my feet here is the star Rigel. And Rigel is about 900 light years away, and Betelgeuse about 640. But you notice how Rigel is actually a little bit brighter, even though it's 300 light years more distant than Betelgeuse. And Rigel is a massive star, and again, it's a star that's going to blow itself up in a supernova someday. Now, a couple things to see is if we go back to the Orion's belt here, you see the star here. This is the star on the left of Orion's belt. And up here, above my head, is the middle star of Orion's belt. And here we have the Horsehead Nebula, which is a giant star-forming cloud. And the red is being lit up by nearby stars. It's in the background of the Horsehead, which you see right here, which is some dust and gases that's not being lit up by nearby stars. And mostly hydrogen in this cloud here, and that's what the redness is. But there's other elements there to make planets and whatever. So here we are with a close-up of this Horsehead Nebula. And you can see it's pretty cool from this shot here, and just a nice cloud here with some stars in the background and the foreground. And this is what the Horsehead looks like up close. Now if we go back to the Orion constellation, we're going to go to another famous nebula, which is located right down here. Located right there is the Orion Nebula. And on this slide is a pretty cool nebula. This thing's about 26 light years across. Again, a giant cloud of atoms. There's hydrogen, helium, and all the elements up to uranium forming new stars and new planets, actually. We actually see new planets forming in this cloud. And then we can see some of the planets. And most of these planets that we see here in this photo are just being pulverized by protons come from nearby giant stars that are just blasting the surface of these planets. And if we go to a close-up here, here's one of the planets here. You see it just being blasted by a nearby star, and it's just taking the surface, just making a tail of it. Almost looks like a comet, kind of. But it's basically blasting this young planet. Who knows if it'll survive, but there's one planet there. And then here we have a shot of a solar system, a star, a protostar, and this is about size is actually a little bit larger than our solar system. This is a whole solar system, and most likely planets being formed in this cloud here. And you can see the light from the young protostar there, just starting out. It's a very young solar system, and that's how solar systems begin. And on this next slide is another protostar with a disk of material around it. And that disk could or could not form stars. We'll see. We'll see in the long run, I guess. But possibly a new solar system forming there. But a protostar is just the beginning of a star until it becomes a full-fledged star, and then it'll be a star. And here's another planet here being pulverized by photons being shot out by the light from nearby stars, and it's just blasting these young planets. Who knows if they'll survive or not, but a lot of the surface of these young planets being torn off by just the photons of these nearby giant stars, young stars, just hitting these planets. And here we come to another cluster, and you can see these two bubbles here on each side of the center here, and these are from these early young stars in this nebula. And what's happening is the solar wind is basically pushing the gas and dust away from these early stars, and it's making these two cavities, one over here to the far left and one behind me. These cavities here, another star-forming cloud here. And as we go to this next one, another star-forming cloud here, and up here a lot of young stars here, and the clusters, and a lot of star-forming clouds all around this nebula here. And again, you see a hole being blasted out by these young stars, the solar wind pushing the clouds away from them. And eventually these clouds will disperse and spread out around the galaxy over the next billions of years. And here's another young star-forming cloud here, a lot of stars in the middle here, new stars. And again, you see the hole because the solar wind from these young stars blasting that dust and gas away from these stars, and it's making a hole here. And again, another giant cloud-forming, star-forming cloud here. It's just amazing where stars come from. And here's another one here. Again, you see the hole where the stars have been blasting away the gases, and another young stars, and so these are where stars are formed, and just an amazing place where stars formed. And on this next slide. Now this is the Pleiades. They came from their cloud. You still see some gases and dust around the stars, but they're moving away from the cloud that they were formed in, and over time these stars are going to spread out away from each other. Some of them will be gravitational bound, and you'll have multiple star systems, 2 or 3 stars, and some of these will be gravitational bound, but a lot of these will separate over time, and they'll spread around the galaxy. And these stars here in the Pleiades, there's about 500 stars in this group, even though you see a few here. A lot of them are smaller stars. And they're about 100 million years old, these stars, very young. I mean, 100 million years old to us seems like a long time, but the life of the universe is just a blink of an eye. These stars are just starting their life out being just being 100 million years old. Now, this next slide brings us back to our home, our planet Earth. Our spaceship in Earth that supplies us with everything we need, the air we breathe, the ground to stand on, water to drink, and everything we need to survive. And there's a picture from the old Apollo days in the 60s and 70s when we landed on the moon. And, there's talk now of us going back to the moon and landing on it. I'd like to see that done. So this is our home planet, and like I said in the past show, this is our home planet. It's the only one we have right now, and it's in dire needs right now for us to pay attention to us and start fixing the planet that we live on, because we really need to do this. This is our only home, and future generations have to be here. And so that's our show for tonight, or today, and thanks for joining me. And our next shows, we're going to get more detail into stars and how stars live their lives, and which is pretty amazing. We'll start from the smaller stars, and then we'll go up to the more massive stars that blow themselves up from supernova and then creates all the elements that make planets and water and air and all the elements inside us that makes us. We are basically children of the stars, as Carl Sagan used to say, and we are made from stars. In the next program, we shall show that. So my name is Rick Costello, and thanks for joining. This is Our Universe, and I really appreciate you watching the show, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.